All right, welcome to another edition of Talking Trout. My name is Mike Coor. I'm the former state council chair for Wisconsin Trout Unlimited. I currently serve as our advocacy chair. We've got a really interesting guest for just the second time in the history of Talking Trout. We're bringing back a guest for a second run. So Paul Cunningham from the DNR is with us tonight. Some of you may remember he was with us in December. He was talking about the brook trout reserve program that the DNR is starting, and had some great information to share with us. And we asked Paul to come back tonight and talk specifically about the stream bank protection program. And this is, again, for those of you who've been out on the streams, you've probably seen the signs. It's, private lands leased for public fishing. And whenever you see those signs, it's because of this program. So we wanted to invite Paul on, give him a chance to talk about this program, how it got started, what it does, what its purpose is, and really talk about, and then maybe have a discussion about what the future of this program is going to look like and what we as Trout Unlimited members can do to help make sure that this program is helping, give us public access to our trout streams in the future. So with that being said, Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you and give you the mic.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. I'm sitting in General Executive Facilities 2, and unfortunately I got a sturgeon above me, not a brook trout or a lake trout, but I didn't feel the need to rearrange the mounts. We have a few others out in the hall. I could have brought a trout in, but this is a topic that's quite important to me, and I've been working on it for a while, and I'm gonna cover slideshow. Can you see my presentation okay, Mike?
We lost it. Went back to your notes screen.
Okay, display slide. How's that?
That's it.
Will that work for everybody?
Yeah, that works. Thanks, Paul.
Great. So I'm going to cover a little bit of, for a lot of folks probably know quite a bit about this program, and some of you others might. And so I'm going to talk about what it is and how does it work and how is our progress coming along. And then at the end, we're going to have more of a conversation about just opportunities for partnership and involvement with Trout Unlimited. You guys are so mature as a conservation organization to really focus your time and attention on habitat protection and management. And this topic is right up your wheelhouse. So with that, of course, I wanted to cover a little bit of a history first on the stream bank protection program. It's an element of the Governor Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program, and it was developed in 1989. It was a bipartisan effort, and the stream bank protection program was established to really, first and foremost, was to protect stream corridors that were anthropogenically threatened by agricultural and urban environments, and to provide public fishing access as well. And given the program and the success on many streams that were originally identified for the program, the department we've been adapting it to try and effectively apply the easement funding we've got. So in 2013, the Bureaus of Fisheries Management and our real estate program and facilities and lands, we worked on kind of drafting a roadmap to chart our course, and the Natural Resources Board at that time in December of 2013 approved our strategy. We focused on a few elements of the program, but in short, cliff notes are we're buying the right to manage that riparian vegetation along the stream bank. We buy the rights to manage in-stream habitat and protect it or manage or manipulate it. And while it's not required by statute, but we generally provide public access, we buy the rights for public access for fishing, hiking, and berry picking. We don't buy the rights for hunting and trapping. And at that time, in 2013, when we were looking at shifting the program a little bit, we developed a 100-mile strategy, and to date we're at about 82.3 miles in 47 streams in 26 counties, and we've spent $4.22 million on acquisition since June of 2014 on the program. The stream bank protection, I wanted to highlight it where it's nested within the fisheries program. It ranks as one of the important elements of our inland trout management plan, and the statewide trout team ranked it as the highest priority for implementation among all our actions in our statewide trout plan. And it's also a core element. It's the attention of the Secretary's office, and we create these secretary metrics reports, and it's one that we track and set goals and objectives for it. And when we retooled it back in 2014, we really looked at local implementation teams as being critical to the success of the program, and the use of implementation teams for us have meant our land agents in the real estate function and our fisheries biologists and staff partnering with folks like Trout Unlimited and other conservation clubs, county land and water staff to reach our goal to implement. And we originally had 8 implementation teams and 3 focus areas. The driftless, of course, was a primary topic and interest, and the Northeast Streams team at the time up here, and the Upper Milwaukee Sheboygan area. The team leads were responsible for recruiting these external partners and developing outreach and applying some of our outreach tools, and leading the effort to contact anglers, because really contact landowners, excuse me, because really what we were trying to do is, prior to that, we were operating on the principle that landowners would occasionally come to us, and the ripe fruit that fell from the trees, we take care of those customers. And this was an effort to really shake the trees and find landowners and engage them, and we really focused our boots on the ground to engage landowners was the goal of the program. And so we approached it with earnest. We did some additions to the eligible streams list. We built a land acquisition Oracle-based tracking system. We call it LATS. It's Oracle-based tracking system in the real estate program. We updated our easement forms. We combined our old fish management easement form and created one. We built mapping tools, and we built an outreach database, and we created these toolkits like I'm showing in the upper right here. And this is this image here of Mabel Romano, Tim Romano, through TU National, was instrumental, and he's a photographer, pretty renowned photographer, of sharing his daughter's photo with us to use as an iconic image, really, of caring for waters and future generations, really, and looking to the future about protecting smallmouth bass and trout water across the state. And so, we put together these outreach toolkits. The real estate program completed market sales studies for many of our markets to accelerate our valuation process. And we did a lot of websites and outreach at that time. And then in 2020, with the changes in land ownership, we retooled our stream bank outreach database to bring in the new landowner records from the land and the county tax parcels from the Land Records Modernization Act. At the time, our current outreach database is land records from version 6 of the county tax parcel system. And for the 43 people that are in the audience right now, they might wonder, well, where do we can't buy easements along all streams across the state. There's criteria established in Chapter 23 statutes and NR 51, our administrative rules. And we manage the eligible waters here. I'm showing some of them. And I'm gonna walk you through, and maybe if we have someone that has interest in a given area of eligibility, I can zoom in and show you some of our tools. We have a I'm going to jump over to it, a stream bank mapping tool that we manage in the department. I don't know if I probably would have to reshare this. Is that right, Mike, or Jason?
Yeah, I think so. I think you'd have to go down to the bottom and
okay, I'm going to see
share
if
your browser.
I'm going to see if I can share this quickly. Maybe end show. Hold on.
Someone mentioned they'd be interested in seeing the Wapaka area.
Okay, we'll zoom into
As a
Wapaka.
suggestion, if you can get it going.
Yeah, I gotta get my cursor onto the other screen. That's the problem. Bear with me. We're gonna figure this. Technology will not save us. Okay, here we go. New share. Screen.
All right, we're seeing your bluegill now.
That's the wrong share.
Okay.
Swap shares to my other screen. New share. Share.
There we go.
Okay, so let's jump over to Wapaka County as an example. So what we've also done is, as we've expanded our authority, we have considered. I'm going to open up our layers. This tool is called the Stream Bank Easement Mapping Tool, and we've also made eligible in these same counties the streams that are fishery areas. So stream bank easement streams here, I'm going to zoom in as an example, are shown in purple. So I'm looking at here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that's Whitcomb Creek. Its headwaters are brook trout water. This is the South Fork of Whitcomb Creek flowing down. Now, any of the streams in Wapaka County that are stream bank easement eligible are shown in purple, and I'll zoom out a little to give you the whole county view. But then also anything that's in red, for example, if I was to go to up here, I'm showing now, I'm zooming in on the Little Wolf River fishery area. And once I get zoomed in, I can show you the landowners as well. Here's a ownership package, that a chunk that we own, fee title. But as an example, on the Little Wolf, if we were to look at the Busick Irrevocable Trust, Michael and Jana Lee here, we currently don't have it in secured as an easement, but it would be also eligible. So our NRB fee project boundaries also, if we wanted to negotiate an easement, it remains eligible. So in Wapaka County, we've got all our fee streams. In Wapaka and Washera counties, I'm going to turn off the tax parcel data because it gets a little busy for the viewer. Bear with me. County tax parcels. Now I'm not showing the county tax parcels, and I'll zoom out to the whole county view. You can see up towards the west, you got Dewey Marsh up in the upper corner. And then you're into Marathon County. All the purple and red streams that are fishery area project boundaries are included in Wapaka County. Statewide, I think about 58% of our classified trout water is eligible. So we have broad eligibility. We've expanded it over the years as an example. I don't know if there's any other spots in the chat where we can create these maps for our partners in Trout Unlimited to show where the areas are eligible as well. I don't know if there's anybody else that wanted to look at any other sites across the state for eligibility. But if you're in northern Wisconsin, in the northern lakes and forest ecoregion, in those healthy watersheds, you're not going to find stream bank easement eligible streams up north. It's mostly related to that non-point U of the state of central Wisconsin and the driftless and the what we call the southeast glacial till plains of the state is the areas of eligibility.
Hey, Paul, can I interrupt you for real quick? Can you, well, first of all, somebody mentioned Vernon County. I don't know if you want to pan over a little bit from the southwest part of the driftless, well, I guess southern part of the driftless, not necessarily totally southwest.
Vernon County has a rich history of acquisition, and they have a lot of streams that are within what we call the La Crosse comprehensive management program, and we've got a lot of history of acquisition in Vernon County. And some of Vernon County, some of the, particularly the brown trout streams, we would classify as blue ribbon, where we've acquired quite a bit of access. So here I'm going to turn on, for your benefit, the classified trout water.
Okay.
As a backdrop. So okay, it is on now. So like if we go up to say Coon Creek area, you can see that all the red of the Coon Creek system is eligible. And once we get down near Chaseburg, these blue streams, which are class 1 streams, so a few of those, like here, there, I'm highlighting Hazley Creek, Wing Hollow, lower portions of Coon Creek are not eligible, but by and large, the Coon Creek system is eligible. If I was to move south, you've got the North Fork of the Bad Axe is all eligible. The Sidey Hollow branch, the South Fork of the Bad Axe, some of the Hornby is actually La Crosse Comp, where we can buy feed.
Hey, Paul, could you talk for just a minute as to why one stream might be eligible and one would not be eligible?
Sure. So we have some a lot of the NRB, the red systems that are where we have fee title acquisition authority as well, were earlier, prior to 1989. So there's this chronology of events that occurred prior as well. So we had streams where we were buying fish management easements prior to the Knowles-Nelson stewardship program as well. So there's a little history related to it. And then what we looked at when we've added streams, we have administrative rules, NR 51, and our statutes. First of all, they have to be higher quality systems. They shouldn't be degraded to the point where they're threatened and impaired under the Clean Water Act as 303 delisted. We try and avoid those systems. We look at the higher quality streams in terms of IBIs, in terms of fisheries abundance, and if they can be in need of habitat work, and but we're targeting generally those higher quality trout streams. And today, when we look at them too, we also project climate change impacts on some of these systems when we're enlisting new ones, because these are long-term investments and we want to make sure that they're suitable for trout into the future as well. So those are some of the factors we use in reviewing nominations through the Stream Bank Protection Program. There's two ways that we can change eligibility. We generally don't add streams just because we have one interested landowner. That's not sufficient. Landowner interest is of course important. We've dropped systems and we manage them. I'm going to put on a layer how we manage our eligibility. I'm going to show you what we manage it based on what we call hydrologic unit codes. And so we're often trying to find our huts. We're looking at the characteristics of land use in these hydrologic unit codes. So now I'm going to zoom in and show you when we select a system today, we're looking at like, okay, let's see if I can zoom. Oops, wrong way, Corrigan. Trying to zoom. Got out of the county. Show my identifier off. I'm showing them their different color tones. Now, for example, here I'm on the North Fork of the Bad Axe. It's called Pumpkin Ridge North. So we try and manage these whole units. And so when we select an area, we're often looking at all the perennially contributing trout tribs to the perennial tribs to the classified water today. We do gauge our interest on landowner interest, but usually we try and have a better sense of our conservation partners too and their interests. There's some areas of certain areas of the state where we've had poor success. Merely making a system eligible doesn't turn a transaction for us. We've had difficulties in some areas of the state, and we can talk about that more later. So if I was to look at like the zoomed out view of Vernon County, this shows all the eligibility across the county that we have, either the red or the purple systems. Quite a bit of eligibility actually, and some fairly completed projects when you start zooming in. And if you're an angler and looking at our public access mapping tools, you got to get zoomed in. You know, you really have to be at that zoomed in view before you'll start to see these easements showing up. You know, they don't show up. That's a fee title ownership there, but they just don't show up very well unless you start to zoom in. Then you can see the easements. And for the chapters and the leadership, you know, we can create customized maps as well. So I wanted to give you that view of your local biologist has these tools they can share with you. It's better to share it spatially than to create a list, so to speak. And so we can, if you have a landowner that's interested, you can zoom in to the landowner and see if they're on an eligible stream. I'm going to swap sharing. I'm going to go to, actually, I'll jump over to what we use. So let's take and maybe go to Whitcomb Creek. It came up and talk about how we would our outreach database. So I'm gonna grab our outreach database, and our biologists have these tools. So can you see my screen still, Mike? The outreach database.
Yeah, it looks good. We're with you.
Okay, so if I wanted to do a mailing, say on Whitcomb Creek, I would want to know let's go over to Whitcomb. Zoom out a little. Go back up to doing a mailing on Whitcomb. As an example. So Whitcomb Creek is in the Blake Creek Little Wolf River watershed, and the sub watershed is Whitcomb Creek. And I'm gonna then pull down. I'm going on the fly here now. Blake Creek, Little Wolf River, Whitcomb Creek. So now I have the sub watershed, and I'm gonna say our biologists can create they create their own templates, and they can generate outreach letters. I can download all the landowners along Whitcomb Creek in the sub watershed and share it with the TU chapter as well. So now I'm looking at Whitcomb Creek, and I see by my page count here, trying to see it, 101 landowners, and I've auto-populated each landowner's name. This happens to be Barb and Greg Johnson, and I've got 102 pages, so I know there's 102 riparian landowners on the Whitcomb Creek. I can go back to the mailing database. I can create labels. Now I've just generated all the labels for the Whitcomb Creek landowners, all of them. In the data system, I'm going to jump back to the access database. I can, close print preview. I can track a landowner. I can keep all my notes if I want to find a given landowner in Whitcomb Creek. I can outreach. I can take Whitcomb Creek and figure out who the big hitters are. I'm going to pick it again, Blake, Little Wolf, Whitcomb Creek, and I can search. Here shows them all and their parcels, how many parcels they had. If I wanted to run a report, I could say Whitcomb Creek, Blake is the Huck, Little Wolf, Whitcomb Creek. Now I can view all the landowners, and I can say, well, if I was to project a 66-foot buffer along their riparian ownership, these are ordered in the amount of easement area that they would hold. So Leroy Bartell is the largest landowner with easement potential, going all the way down to the 102 landowners, scrolling down to the lowest, down to a 1/4 of an acre. So I can group these. I can, in the access database, I can organize it in a way that I choose priority landowners, and so I can pick landowners that I want to create priority mailings for, or do different things for. I can take a landowner and I can do a feedback follow-up summary. If, let's say, I picked Lacrosse Kick Bad Axe, I'm going to go over, someone asked about Vernon County, and I'm going to pick Tanner Creek, and I can see what we've done for follow-up and feedback on Tanner Creek. And now I'm sharing with you what Kirk Olson's done is for in terms of responses. He heard from these 3 customers. 2 of them were not interested. 1 was. I can run them for any of the sub watersheds. So we built some pretty aggressive tools to do. We can export these results to Excel. We can run batches on different watersheds, and these are tools our biologists all have on their desktop if they want them. So they're handy. We're in the process of trying to upgrade this to an Oracle-based system, this access database. I'm going to swap my view, and I'm going to go back to this share.
Hey, Paul, while you're doing that, somebody had a question about, as long as we're talking about the landowners, he was asking from their perspective, how does becoming part of the program impact the landowner? And I'm not quite sure what he meant by the second part of this. It says, as an example, for owners with easy access versus difficult access. But could you just maybe speak for a minute about what the landowner is giving up and what they still have the right to do?
So the landowner, in general, it's from the top of the bank lip back 66. State statute says wherever feasible, the department shall ease 66 feet. So it's from the top of the bank back 66 feet is the riparian area. So what they're giving up is vegetation management. We can, we generally would eliminate row cropping. We have sometimes provided grazing options, but they give up grazing. We give it back to them in a land use agreement. We allow it for a limited duration and manage if we're trying to establish a grassland community and their grazing interests are in line with our goals in terms of riparian habitat. So they give up vegetation management by and large. Now, if they have timber and we cut it, it's their timber, though it's not our timber, the products. So vegetation management is one. They're generally allowing public access. Almost all our easements have public access for fishing. Fishing is the predominant activity. Berry picking, hiking, skiing, snowshoeing, whatever. Not hunting and trapping. They reserve all the hunting and trapping rights. And in-stream habitat management, they are essentially become the co-applicant to any projects that we conduct. So we have all the authority for the in-stream habitat. So we dictate how the habitat is managed in the stream. They enjoy all the other rights, fishing, access, use. If there are existing structures, they can't develop in that 66-foot area. If they have some existing structures, we can make allowances for them when we initially sign the easement. The easement is perpetual. It runs with, when they sell their land, the new landowner has that easement, it transfers with the title. So it runs perpetually with it. We don't, since my tenure, we've never sold an easement. We don't give them back, we keep them. So they're in protected status in that regard. So that's kind of a summary of what they're giving up, and what they're giving is a stewardship future to protecting that riparian zone for future generations. And many of our landowners already are carrying these conservation values with them. And then of course they receive payment. Generally it's somewhere around, ranges, but it's somewhere around $12 to $19 a stream foot is the general range that we're making payment on. And so that's the way it works.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Can you see my screen again, PowerPoint?
I can. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so I covered this mailing system and outreach system, and that's the way we track and manage our customers. Because you can imagine, if you're a biologist out there, you want to make notes of who's who, and who's you know, you're dealing with 50, 60 contacts. You know, you need to be engaged in this. Sometimes we secure a relationship and it's 5 years later that we then secure an easement. We're establishing relationships, you know, as family members are being born and dying. You know, if you're a biologist in a populated area, you need to keep a good ledger of your outreach efforts, and that's what the system does for our biologists. And we can also use this system to share with our partners. So we sought out this 100. I want to talk a little bit about how's it going. We sought out this 100-mile strategy, and I'm showing when we started the 100-mile strategy in 2014, when we began in about June, through 2023. This is a query I did as of January 2023. And I'm showing the cumulative acquisition in terms of stream miles we've done. We're at 82 miles, and I wanted to talk about our progress and share it with you. The counties in this table, and I don't know if our viewers can see it, but I organized them by the biggest acquisition counties to the least. So topping out the list is Dunn and Pierce counties, where we spent $615,000 and $511,000 respectively to purchase 15.6 miles and 12 miles of the easement out and Dunn. And then Dane County sits here at 7.6 miles, and you can work down the list. As you can see, the bigger acquisition emphasis has been in the driftless area. And then we've got Genoa County, Jennifer Bergman has been active in Genoa County and Adams counties, a little bit in Sheboygan, and then our Northeast Streams projects have been slower coming on, but this is the list entirely. This is I'm showing here our accomplishments, and the blue bars are the number of transactions per year. We did it when we started out. We rolled it out in 2014, and we were going in earnest in 2015. Statewide, we had about 52 transactions shown by the blue bars, and totaling about 22 miles acquired in that year. That was our bigger year. The administration put a hold on our activities in 2016, and we started recovering in 2017 and 18. And there's usually a lag in our outreach about a year before we close. So we did a lot of outreach in 2014, and those came to fruition in 2015. And our accomplishments have dwindled since. In 2022, we acquired shy of 10 miles, and we closed on about 5 parcels, 5 or 6 as I recall. I did a snapshot. We have an Oracle-based system of all our negotiations. These are all our negotiations since 2014. And here's that 4.2 million, 82 miles that we've closed on. I show in green. The ones in yellow are ones that are moving through the system. And the ones in light green are ones we're currently in closing on. And the red ones are dead records where we were unable to close, or we dropped them, or rejections, or on hold, different problems. Currently, I'm showing an arrow here. Our pipeline is our initial contact. So when a landowner signs an application, and it's fairly simple application, it's a signature of intent, of interest. It's no formal commitment. And once we have that, then we'll engage in designing the easement with the landowner, pushing it through to having a valuation and creating an offer and option contract for the landowner. Currently, we have 10. The parentheses are the number of landowners. So at initial context, we have 10 totaling 2.7 miles in the system. Right now we have in valuation, we have 2 folks that do valuation. John Rotz out of La Crosse and Peter Walter out of Wisconsin Rapids in our real estate program do our valuation work. And there's 3 out there right now totaling 1.1 miles. This gives you a sense of our snapshot of where we're at. And we don't have a lot coming into what I term as the pipeline of opportunities right now. It's experiencing somewhat of a drought. Those are accomplishments. Now I'd like to shift gears away from accomplishments and talk a little about effort. As you know, our effort is different than accomplishment. So we don't expect, for example, Jonathan Piaskowitz outreach efforts in Shawano County's Tigerton area are expected to yield the same results as Dane County. So we do want to, I'm going to show you our effort in terms of This is from the outreach database through the years. And these are the number of new landowners. So when we get a new landowner, whether they're negative or positive, we enter them in the database. And so this is the response from landowners that we've contacted through the years. And you can see the bigger push in 2014, the absence of activity in 2016 through where the administration asked us not to do any implementation work, the recovery a bit through 2017 to 2019, and somewhat of a decline since 2019, a steady decline, and a little bit of resurgence in 2022. So there is a lag in the outreach efforts because it takes a while to get to closing. So this covers that topic. How's it going from our perspective? We have a statewide plan with priorities. It's in our strategic plan. It's a secretary's metrics. We have acquisition funding. We have focus areas, and we have some broad eligibility as well. Focus areas are areas where we're doing more aggressive outreach. We have the tools. We have the guidance. We have habitat and real estate specialists to help us, but in spite of all our assets, we're not meeting our performance metrics for the stream bank protection program at this time. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what that means and what are the opportunities for improvement, and that our performance is not meeting our expectations. Well, we built roles where the fish biologist was really the main negotiation face for the program, getting significant support from the real estate staff as well. But we're currently going through a program review for our fisheries program in its entirety. Our policy team is, and they're really taking a look at as well some of these issues. And I think, you know, in this performance review right now, we're re-engaging this increased emphasis and discussion on the long game of habitat protection and management. So that's a prime topic about increased emphasis and effort here. The role of our habitat specialists out on the landscape, which we've invested in, we're working on better figuring out the role of the habitat specialist for implementation. This performance question we've developed in our program a fisheries strategic implementation team, and this statewide team is really, I've handed it to them, this issue, to really try and address this conundrum of our performance problems here. And so you know, we're asking the questions: do our fish biologists have the individual performance objectives in their work plans? What are their barriers? We're interested in as well as surveying landowners, whether they're landowners who sold us an easement or landowners that haven't. We're pursuing a landowner surveys to try and get a better understanding on what might be limiting our enrollments, and what are some of the myths associated with the program. We submitted last year a $4.7 million America the Beautiful grant application that TU also wrote support letters for us for implementing easement acquisition with a focus on the brook trout reserves across the state. And unfortunately, it wasn't funded. None of the 5 projects submitted by the department were funded. We're just finished off a resubmission of a preliminary invitation application as well. We've rescoped it a bit, and we're hopeful that we can secure additional resources there. When we pursued the strategic plan back in the 100-mile roadmap, we met with Trout Unlimited statewide council, secured their interest in being a formal partner of the project. They're recognized as such, your partnership. And obviously some of the chapters here don't intersect with a lot of stream bank easement water and others do. Eligible water, I'm thinking like Aldo Leopold, the Frank Hornberg, the Blackhawk, the Southern Wisconsin chapter, the Kioptawish, the Harry and Laura Knorr chapter. You know, there are many chapters there, the Connell system, even to some degree, the Shawpaka has a lot of new water in Shawano County and even Marathon County. So there are multiple opportunities for partnering with the biologists on outreach efforts. Some of the this is just an ad from the Southern Wisconsin chapter. You know, the Southern Wisconsin chapter and the Pecatonica Pride Watershed Group sponsored stream bank suppers annually. In Blanchardville, they invited us as department staff to answer questions and provide technical support, but they did all the arrangements. They invited all the landowners. They were instrumental in recognizing the landowners. Sometimes landowners want to hear from other landowners. They don't want to hear from the department so much, but they've been very active in playing a role in partnering down in that Pecatonica East Branch of the Pecky watershed area. And I'm closing with this thought, you know, and it's an open invitation for ideas. The department, we've been collaborating at different levels with Trout Unlimited on the implementation and outreach effort. Trout Unlimited volunteers and staff host and assist some of our outreach efforts, but there's a broad range of different opportunities, from forming local coalitions to paid ads to newsletters to open house meetings, to creating landowner testimonials, training outreach methods. We can train outreach methods to y'all. We don't have a scripted book on all this, but this is an opportunity that I wanted to take and ask you guys what, you know, I pitched a few ideas over the years to the state council. One was fishing for easements. And I just wanted to open it up at this point and capture any thoughts and ideas from many of the chapters on what they see as a way in which the local chapter could play a role in securing and protecting trout habitat and angling access for future generations. I'm going to close there.
Thanks, Paul. I would just say, I know we've got about, let's see, there's about 40 of us on here. So I would just say, if you've got an idea, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself, or and just go ahead and throw it out there. If you want to throw it in the chat, we can. I've got a couple of things in the chat waiting. We'll come to and get to that. I really like the idea of, and I know Southern Wisconsin's not the only chapter that does this, but like the landowner appreciation events, like that's something that we probably as an organization need to do more of. It's an opportunity for us to engage, you know, landowners and come at them from a different angle than, say, sometimes, you know, some folks aren't necessarily happy when they see a letter from the DNR show up. And so sometimes the conversation's a little different when it starts with some of us who are out there fishing the waters. So
yeah, our outreach methods of letters can only go so far. I'm sure, you know, our response rate is right around a mailing is right around 15-20%. So there's 80% of these folks that it's going into the circular. Perhaps their lives are busy. They may hold very strong conservation ideals, and it's just considered, you know, we send them a postcard, a nice brochure, and a letter, but they, you know, it may never get read. So it's only one method, and there are multiple opportunities for different outreach. And the Southern Wisconsin chapter is just an example. I didn't, you know, I was just sharing it as an example of one of the chapter's efforts. You know, that Tough Wells and the group down at Southern Wisconsin chapter have stayed with over the years. And I think there was a grant supported funds for the watershed group, Pecatonica Pride, that helped pay for the dinners. And they did an excellent job at, you know, recognizing landowners. They had landowner recognition where the landowners that sold an easement came and they recognized them publicly, which is
Yeah.
really pretty cool.
Yep, absolutely. More stuff like that needs to happen. Duke mentioned it seems like there's little interest in the Trempealeau and Buffalo counties area in obtaining easements there. At least that's the perception. Do you have any insights into, have you ever taken a deep dive into those areas?
Well, that Duke's perspective could be reality or myth. I don't know. But that's one of the things that we're thinking about with landowners is actually doing a really science-based survey with our Office of Applied Sciences where we can target, say, the systems over in the Buffalo and Trempealeau counties and pull those landowners from the database and conduct a survey of those landowners to see what their attitudes are about this, if they're even aware of the program. And so to the answer to the Duke's question, I don't know reality over there. I only hear what he hears, which is there's conservation clubs that are active, but there's reticence about the state program. And I'm not, and because of that reticence about landowner interests, the department staff have not nominated a lot of water in that Trempealeau County area. There's not a lot of streams that have been nominated for easement eligibility.
So that might have something to do with it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so explain to me again, is it the biologists who are primarily in charge of doing this, or I know you mentioned the habitat specialist, which is actually a different, that's more of a regional position, right? Like, are they able to do this work too?
Yes, they are. And in fact, we're trying to better figure out their role. About 10% of their PD, their position description, is stream bank protection, easement outreach, and negotiation. So they are a part of it. Now, a local chapter can if they have ideas, I encourage them to approach their local biologist, and talk about this as express their interest. Our biologists and our government is run by those who show up. And so if there's an energetic interest in partnering, I welcome, the local chapters to reach out to our biologists. There's popularity with the in-stream habitat projects. Maybe this is not as appealing as track hoe and revegetating a riparian buffer, but it's in the long game, it's more critical.
Brian had an interesting question. He said a 66-foot easement could be a large amount of an owner's property. Are there options to do less? Do you do smaller easements?
We do 33 feet occasionally on some of the intermittent drainage ways. We have a set of handbook guidance. Statute requires whenever feasible, the department shall acquire 66 foot. 66 foot, if you drop a tree on the boundary, it's going to hit this creek still. It enables us to get heavy equipment in there if we're doing restoration work. It's probably not wide enough if we're doing riparian reforestation, very easy. If a landowner has existing practices like say a dwelling or primary residence or a building, we accommodate that and we'll go narrower, and we'll negotiate those. Generally, we don't negotiate row crops and things like that. Those are the things we want to alleviate some of those impairments. So we'll try and acquire at least 66 on a row cropping area. They are all, in that the program is voluntary, they are all subject to the negotiation with the landowner though. So all our projects require our fish biologists to be on site, walking the property with the landowner, sitting at their coffee table, talking about some of these issues, coming to a mutual understanding of what will work for their conservation interests as well. And if we can make a fit, we will. If we can't, we may share them other options for other programs as well. Our interests aren't necessarily in securing an easement from the state. When we do outreach in Dane County has an easement program. We don't really care if the landowner signs up with the Dane County or the department. We'll share Dane County's program as well. So we do negotiate and try and remain flexible. We do try and think about the environmental setting though, whether or not there's springs, seeps, wetlands, other tributaries as we negotiate with the landowner. We do try and secure walk-ins when they're isolated, and it's difficult for anglers to navigate the creek at more than a third of a mile to get to the site. If they're isolated parcels, we negotiate walk-ins. In some situations, if we feel there's a need, we negotiate a spot for a parking area too. But those are all, in agreement with the landowner. We'll flag the parking area so they understand. We'll walk the walk-ins. We'll do our due diligence to make sure our landowners are comfortable. So when we give them an option contract, it was a shared result.
Sure, that makes sense. There are a couple of questions here I'm going to try to combine into one, and let's just take hypothetically speaking, I sell you and I sell the state an easement on my property, which it's not on a stream, but let's say it's on a stream. Who goes through and determines how that riparian corridor is best managed? And the second question would be, if there's say there's a fishing trail or something like that, is that maintained as part of the public access easement, or is that does that depend on what the local fisheries crews happens to be doing or what their priorities are for the area?
So the riparian area, we own the authority to manage the riparian area. We will discuss the landowner's interest, but ultimately it was the department's, the biologist's choice of how to manage the riparian zone in terms of vegetation management. If the landowner has a trail, we've made accommodations for a bridge, wooden bridges, and sometimes we'll capture them, but generally we buy the right to preclude all structures. So the landowner can't build a structure in that 66-foot area. We want to set away development from the riparian zone. So we own the vegetation management rights. We will consult with the landowner. Generally, we don't manage trails. Are you thinking of angler walking trails? If you've been on our easements, there are trails based on frequent foot traffic on many of them. They are quite popular. So trails exist by human disturbance along the riparian zone. We haven't gotten a fee increase in 18 years. We don't probably have, of all our hundreds of miles of trout water or easements area, we don't have the ability to manipulate and make trails along the mode corridors along the stream. And in many cases, it's not in our interest either. We do have some that are more easily accessible than others. We try and manage our portfolio of opportunities so that some sites are easy to fish, and then some sites are harder and you're going to have to bushwhack to get in, and that's okay. So we're trying to accommodate diverse angling interests. Some folks just want to fish within 150 feet of the bridge deck, you know, and others want to find these more isolated parcels and which have less pressure. So
Yeah.
I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, I think so.
Generally, there won't be a trail. Anglers will create trails. And vegetation management, we're exploring different approaches, because yesterday's vegetation management may not work for future conditions. As
Yep.
I've talked about thermal impacts of climate change, we're looking, our last America the Beautiful grant was a lot about reforestation of the riparian zones for brook trout management. So
Sure. Yeah, and we've seen the same thing like in stream too, right? Like what we did 30 and 40 and 50 years ago, we've kind of come around and realized maybe that's not the best way to do things in the future, or maybe there are better ways to do it. So that
yeah,
stuff's always evolving.
We're evaluating what we've done and charting course corrections as we go.
Sure.
As well.
Yeah. Duke brought up something about in the last budget cycle, the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program, the funding for it was cut. At least the DNR portion was cut, which includes the easements and this program. Do you know, have those cuts got down to the point where that cut in funding is not what's causing the recent like dip in stream bank protection, you know, easements in the pipeline, is it? Are those two correlated, or are they two separate? There's enough money to do.
So when the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program started in '89, we had a dedicated account of 1.2 million per year in the stream bank easement world. We're down considerably from there. Fortunately, or it depends on your perspective, we don't have much for fee title, but we still have that 2/3 must be spent on easements. And so the department's two activities related to easement acquisition are the Forest Legacy Program and the department's stream bank easement program. Currently, I've never done a denial on an easement because of lack of funding. Since 2014, that's not been an administration shut it down in 2016 for a while. Our implementation efforts, it wasn't due to budget, it was politics. I've never had a denial based on funding. We do spend, the real estate program spends some sport fish restoration funding, Dingle Johnson funds, on acquisition for our easements as well. The Fish and Wildlife Service has agreed to our grant program through SFR that is an eligible activity. So we have used SFR, but we've never been, this is not a revenue limit problem at this point.
Sure. That's good to hear. And we hope that if it does become a revenue problem, please let us know, because we've been known to rattle some cages and shake things up when need be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
conceivably, we could spend trout stamp on this activity as well. We could buy fee title or easement with trout stamp.
Sure. Sure.
Currently, we don't spend trout stamp funds on easement acquisition. We have historically used some trout stamp on limited term employees, LTE outreach. Currently, we're not. There's no trout stamp funding going into the easement program at the moment for implementation. I consider it a good investment if it was trout stamp, funded as well, to use the trout stamp funds for outreach and effort to secure. Oh, the match ratio would be unbelievable. You know, we're on track funding wise. I think when I forecasted 100 miles, it was going to cost us about 6.2 million, and we've spent 4.2 for that 82 miles. So from that perspective, although we certainly haven't met our goals, our interests are in how can we improve our performance.
Sure. Hey, question for you. Have you ever done any follow-up studies with the folks who turned down the offers? Like, I think there were When you showed one of those slides, there were like 80 some offers that had been objected or something like that.
Yeah.
Was that people who got an offer and decided that wasn't enough, or they changed their mind, or I'd be curious to know why people were.
That's this slide here. The question is this.
Yeah, there's an offer rejected. Yep.
So that offer rejected represents, we've generally been around that 66% acceptance. And when the land agent or the biologist gets an offer rejected, they have to populate in our land acquisition tracking system the reason for the rejection. So
Okay.
we know why these offers rejected. And there's no single one thing. Some of them are money, some of them are kin. The kids and the heirs to the farm or the property came in and said, no, we don't want this encumbrance. Some of them are deer hunting. There's just no, when I slice up the pie, and I have it I don't have it in this PowerPoint presentation. There's no one single thing that stands out. So, but we do look at that to see what are some of the barriers to why didn't they accept our offer. What we're also interested in is why didn't they respond to our mailings? What's holding them back from engaging with us? When we do outreach. So I can see if I got the data somewhere if you'd like.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to, go into it now, but I was just curious if there were trends that popped up where, if it was, like 80% of the people that rejected this said the offer wasn't enough money or something like that, then maybe the landowner is seeing the value of their land higher than, the real estate experts. And maybe that's a fair, it's their property. So I imagine it's harder to put a value on something like this as opposed to just a straight up real estate transaction if you're buying the land outright, right? Because it's kind of a weird situation where like you're giving up your rights, some of your rights, but it's still your land.
Right, and we're trying to build a better system for maintaining more frequent communications with our landowners as our our numbers of landowners have gotten more numerous. So because we always maintain a relationship, and then of course people sell their lands, and so someone inherits that easement with a new acquisition. So it's maybe I gave it to you guys. Let's see here. I'm gonna view. I know I've got the data. I did an analysis. Somewhere. I know I have it. I can't find it, Mike. Be willing to share it sometime. I can't find it.
Okay.
But I did that analysis, and it is a good question to say, because we had this interest in, well, there's been proposals to call for example, a more limited duration easement to eliminate conflicts with the hunting season, deer hunting. And perceptions of deer, the reason people have rejected offers for deer hunting is not that significant. For us to change and manage two different easements, one with a more limited duration. So we've chosen to avoid that complexity of having a limited duration easement, like it's open only months.
That makes it a lot more complicated out on the stream too, right?
Yeah, and these areas are meant, obviously, angling in in this case, trout angling and smallmouth bass angling are a very important reason, but they're not the only reason why people go to these sites, you know.
Sure.
Our publics can enjoy these sites and don't need to be angling as well, as long as
Sure.
they don't trap.
Yeah.
And people.
And I've always thought, I mean, obviously the anglers are the ones benefiting from this, but I've always thought that this program should be more of a tool for protecting our streams and water quality. Like you talked about the very beginning of the program, that was like the main goals in 1989 when it got created. And I always think about, I think Minnesota has like a buffer law or something in place where they've got like buffers on all of their streams, and that's essentially what this is, just on a more voluntary basis. But it always seemed to me like if we want to get a handle on water quality, like this has got to be one of the tools that we utilize.
Yeah, and the voluntary basis is their choice to sell the easement.
Right.
You know, once we secure it, we have the management rights. And the stream bank protection program, when the legislature created it, we have to take those rights, and the department shall acquire the right to prohibit herbicides, fertilizers, row cropping, all these activities. We shall do that. It is a habitat protection and management first. We may acquire angling public use. We're not required, but as a
Sure.
matter of course, we've tried to keep them all publicly accessible, because our publics are our best watchdog over those riparian areas.
Yeah.
You know, we don't, in the department, we don't have enough staff time to do all the compliance monitoring we want. And so, you know, our biologists, our anglers, including Trout Unlimited staff, our volunteers their voices are, we hear them about when there's problems on an easement, you know, with a landowner. So we do have old easements from the non-point source program that don't have public access, and no one pays attention to them. They're out of sight, out of mind, and I'm sure they're poor compliance with them. And they were related to riparian areas as well. We don't have a lot of them. So we've tried to keep these all publicly accessible when possible, from that perspective of let's keep our public on them to realize that, you know, they have a stake in these places, because we've got such an amazing portfolio of trout resources out there. And the stream bank protection program is an important element. We can't buy all the land to protect these sites, but our easements are much more affordable and give us that kind of opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's easy to kind of, I guess it would be easy to walk away from this conversation being kind of depressed or down, or like, looks like we had a good program going and like it's really dipped down the last couple of years and seems to be losing interest. But it's hard to judge, because who knows like how much of that is just COVID related, right? Like you had a whole year where none of the biologists were allowed to go into the field. So I'm sure that had something to do with this, and it'll be interesting to see if we can turn this program around and get it moving in the right direction again, the way it was headed. But when we think about it,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying you guys are critical in making that happen too.
Yeah, I guess to end on a positive note, I just wanted to like reiterate how lucky and how fortunate we are here in Wisconsin to have these 300 some miles of streams that are private lands that the state has gone out and negotiated on our behalf our access to, and to be able to walk the stream bank. And I always make it a point when I'm our advocacy chair, so we do a lot of talking with legislators and that, and I always talk about this program and the public-private partnerships that exist, and just how a much more enjoyable outdoor fishing experience it is when you're on one of these rivers that has an easement where you can just hop out and walk the bank and get back in and fish the next spot that you want to fish, as opposed to having to keep your feet wet and like walk through it or even worse yet, be in a state like Colorado where you've got your feet wet and you get to the place where you see the private property sign and you're not even allowed to go in the water, walking on that property in the water because their property includes the stream bed. And so we're really fortunate here in Wisconsin that we have it the way we have it. And I think it's one of the great things that we have going for us that'll continue to keep our, it's going to continue to keep anglers interested, and the more anglers you've got out there, the more people you have caring for the resource. And so I think that's a good thing. But
yeah, and we have that 300-mile figure is what we acquired since '89. We had under the old ORAP program, and we had been securing easements prior to that even. So we've even got more than that. That's just under the Knowles-Nelson provision. So, there's quite a bit out there. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that doesn't include like all the county easements that you mentioned. I know Monroe County's been really good about that lately. Dane County's done a lot. There's other counties that have stepped up and taken that on as well. So
yeah, and we tried to make those available on our Trout viewer, the other counties layers for non-DNR easements. So when we can get our hands on that spatial data, we bring it into our system so our trout anglers know where they're at.
Yes, that's great. I know we're getting late here. It's 20 after 9. So I want to maybe wrap this up and just say, Paul, thanks again for coming on twice in the last, 6 months, 7 months. Had the pleasure of you joining us. So I really appreciate that. And for those who are still on, let you know we're taking the summer off of our Talking Trout episodes. So we'll be back in the fall. And I am looking for a co-host. So if you'd be interested in helping me set these up in the future and making sure that we continue to run these on a monthly basis, feel free to reach out to me. My contact info is in the Trout newspaper. My email is mikek.trout@yahoo.com. So, Paul, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
And thanks for having me, and good luck if you get out fishing this weekend.
I am headed out fishing this weekend, so I'll take all the luck you can give me.
Is there a way in which you could share the chats for me and I can respond to any of them if need be for follow-up or not?
Yeah, I could do that. Yes.
Send them my way if you would. I can follow up with any of the members that will want to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And likewise, if folks on still have questions for Paul, if we didn't answer anything quite the way you were hoping, feel free to reach out to me and I can put you in contact with Paul too.
Yeah, I'd be happy to follow up.
All right. That sounds great. Thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.
All right. Bye, everybody. Be safe. We'll see you on the water.